Hey guys, Andy here. So I'm reviewing today the Xiaomi Mi A2 Lite. I've used quite a few different Xiaomi devices in my time. Normally my issue with them is the software. The hardware is usually very good, and then they have their own skin on it, which generally is just quite clunky, I suppose, in some ways. And I think maybe it's more suited to the Eastern market, perhaps, because they're not, they've not really been marketing it for the Western world until recently. So they're finally a week or two back launched in the UK. So I bought this Xiaomi from Carphone Warehouse for £135, which is definitely down there at the sort of the budget end of things. I have done a couple of other phones, the Alcatel V3 or 3V and the Nokia 5 recently, which are both down at this sort of price bracket. So I thought it'd be interesting to see how the Xiaomi one at this end of things compares. It's also known as the Redmi 6 Pro. Xiaomi are very weird with their naming conventions. Why has it got two different names? I don't know. I don't understand why you do that, but it is. It's also called the Redmi 6 Pro. I did the Mi A1 back in October 2017, and I seem to remember I quite liked it. It's nice because it has stock Android. So the big thing that, as I say, puts me off the Xiaomi devices is their software, but these are Android One, as you can see down the bottom of the phone there, which means it's basically stock Android, a slightly slimmed back for sort of lower performance phones, stock Android. The issue that I had with the Mi A1 was it was still a little bit laggy, I seem to remember, amongst a few other things. The screen perhaps not so great, the camera not so great, the usual stuff on a budget device that isn't going to be quite as good. But yeah, so here we are with the Mi A2 Lite. It's 178 grams, which is, in this day and age, is a bit lighter for a phone. It's 8.8 millimeters thick, or deep if you want to say, so it's not crazy thin, but it feels quite good in the hand. It feels a reasonable size. For the first time, so you get a very thin rubbery case in the box with the phone, and I actually kind of prefer it with the case on, which is probably the first time that's ever been the case, because it is quite thin, it's quite rubbery, so you do get good grip from it. You know it's protected when you throw it about on your desk. There's not, some people won't like this at all, but there's very little overlap, so you're perhaps not as safe putting it face down. A lot of cases they have more of a lip around the edge, and I actually quite like that this doesn't, if you can see. So yeah, I actually really like it in the case, which is not a very common thing for me to say. I'll take it out for the review though, just so you can see the actual hardware. It's the usual kind of Xiaomi design, to be honest. It's got a dual camera on the top left there, which we will talk about in a little while. It's got the centrally located fingerprint sensor, which actually I find very reliable. It's not very quick. I mean, that was very slow. But I would say normally about 90% accurate, which is pretty good. I seem to have more problems with my left finger. Maybe I just didn't... Oh, I only just brushed over it then and locked it. Maybe I didn't record as good a fingerprint in the first place, perhaps. So we've mentioned the fingerprint sensor. The actual hardware, so we're running a Snapdragon 625, which is a 14 nanometer chipset. That's twice as big as my Huawei Mate 20 Pro. I mean, obviously you shouldn't compare, they're totally different price brackets, but I'm basically saying it's quite old tech. It is a couple of years old, the 625. It's got an octa-core 2 GHz Cortex A53 CPU. It's got a Adreno 506 GPU. This version has 3 GB of RAM with 32 GB of storage. You can get a 64 GB of storage with 4 GB of RAM. It's about £35 more. Well, it depends where you find these prices, to be honest, because some of them are like 160 and 190. I found this at 135. I think there was a 160 for the 4 GB. I was looking just for the cheapest you can get, really. So yeah, you could spend it more and have a slightly higher spec, but this is a budget phone, so I was going for the cheapest you could go. Geekbench scores me, now I did it on Geekbench 3 and 4, 3 being the older version obviously, where I've got a bit more sort of to compare of this kind of price range, and it came out as 5,121, which isn't too bad, Geekbench 4, just for giggles, scored 4,263, is not great, but that's okay. Other hardware things to note, not that I've got a notification, maybe there is a notification light just down here in the corner, just only white, it's not multicolour that I could see. This is a dual SIM model. You can fit dual SIM and an SD card in this, which is not a very common thing in this day and age. The speaker, it is a Soul speaker, I'm fairly sure, at the bottom. It's quite loud though.
Somebody in the media brought up her name. He didn't bring up her name because he was talking about the coaching search and all this, and it was like, well, you know, what about Condoleezza Rice? And he goes, you know, I've heard him. Just
we'll do a little bit of.
Bounce, 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 bounce. Come on.
So the quality is not particularly good, but actually the volume is reasonable. In my test, it averaged 87.8 decibels. That's across 3 different sort of types of music, which it puts in the top quarter, only just, but you know, quite loud, quite loud. The screen, oops, there we go. Just failed with my left finger, but I didn't have it very well on the fingerprint sensor, to be honest. So the screen is 5.84 inches corner to corner, with a 79.5% screen to body ratio. So obviously we do have a notch. It's not that big though. That's, I think, as notches go, I mean, it's not a teardrop notch, but I think that's reasonable. I think that's acceptable. You've still got plenty of space either side for notifications and icons. And there is a bit of a chin as well. And there is a bit of an edge as well, because it is LCD and you just can't get edge to edge with LCDs at this point. The one weird thing I can't remember if the way to hide notches came in Android 9.0, and we'll come to software in a second, but I can't find any way to hide the notch, unfortunately, so you are kind of stuck with that. But when you play YouTube videos, it doesn't go into the notch, which I think is probably a better option. So let's just quickly.
BF5 has.
So if we zoom, you see how there it. Well, not that you can see that well. It's not a great video to show. There you go. You can see there. So it kind of hides the notch in that respect. It's, I didn't mention the ratio. So it's 2280 by 1080. So it's 1080p. That's not too bad. 19 by 9 ratio with about 432 pixels per inch screen density, which, to be fair, going back a year or two would have been top end. So that's not bad. To me, it seems quite a crisp screen. LCD's got a lot better these days. The colours generally look quite good. The blacks are reasonable. They're not as good as an AMOLED, obviously. But yeah, it's not a bad screen. Brightness wise, it peaked at I think 532 lumens on my test. Generally it was around 500. It's not massively high. Yeah, if you're in a country where it's sunny all the time, it could be a bit of a pain in the bum. But generally the screen for a budget phone, yeah, it's not too bad. The viewing angles, they're not too bad. They're not, I mean, they're not, ooh. Yeah, they're not too bad. So the screen's okay. The cameras on the back, we have two 12 no, sorry, yeah. No, we don't. We have a 12 megapixel and a 5 megapixel, sorry. They're both f2.2, which is not great. The lower the number, the more light that gets let in, therefore the better performance in the dark. It can do 1080p at 30 frames per second. It's got electronic image stabilization. And the video generally wasn't too bad. I thought the image stabilization did a reasonable job with it, actually. It looked really bad when I was filming, but when you play it back, it's reasonably smooth. The front-facing camera is a 5 megapixel f2.0, interestingly, so that's a bit better in lower light, which is kind of weird. It can also do 1080p at 30 frames per second. Stills from the rear, they, on the whole, in good conditions, they generally looked quite good. Certainly adequate, I would say, for Instagram or Facebook and things like that. When you zoomed in a bit closer, if you upload them to your PC or something like that, you could see they weren't great, but they were, you know, you wouldn't, again, put them on Instagram, you don't need it to be that high detail. In lower light conditions, it struggled a bit more, especially in the video. It'll vary, there's a lot of noise. But again, this is when you're buying a budget phone, this is normally where you will find one of the sort of drawbacks, or one of the sort of money-saving aspects will have been in the camera, basically. So it didn't seem too bad. Software-wise, so as I said, it's kind of stock Android, being an Android One device. What I'm not really sure about is why we're on Android 8.1. Why we're not on Android 9. I don't know if there's a reason for that with Android One, if there's any kind of issues. I don't know. Security, obviously, as you'd expect. Where is that mentioned? It's in the actual security bit. What does it tell you? there it is, November 1st. Again, as you would expect from an Android One product. There is a bit here about Mi services, but they're both, you can opt out of both of those. So aside from not being able to hide the notch, there wasn't really, I mean, if I'm honest, it is Android One. It's quite basic Android, I suppose, in some ways. There's not really much for me to show you, if I'm honest. There's a little bit of jitter in it, but actually not huge amounts. It's generally, I think it's generally very smooth, actually. Personally, I feel better than the Mi A1, which I would get some jitter opening emails and things. So there's a little bit of jitter there, but I think that's more about things loading in and images kind of appearing and stuff. So yeah, I think, as you can see, that's actually quite smooth. So well done, Xiaomi, for that. Stock Android, and it's nice and smooth on a budget device. We're going to move on to the battery. So the battery is a 4,000 mAh LiPo battery. It scored 91.5 in my test, which is, it's okay. I say 0.5 because literally I think it was about 7 seconds. It went 7 seconds to go. It went from 92 down to 91. Oh, I'll give it the half. It does have a rapid charge, but I think the headline here is the standby. So can you see there? Look, last full charge 1 day 14 hours, and I'm on 48%. It thinks I've got about another day and 10 hours to go. Now, granted, my screen on time is only 2 hours 21, but actually that includes a reasonable bit of podcast playing. I was on the phone for about half an hour yesterday. I've been to the gym. The gym in itself, on most phones, it'll rip through 15 to 20% because I'm listening to music. I'm recording my sets in an app on the phone, and I'm listening to music via Bluetooth, that is. That's included in this hour and 14 minutes was a trip to the gym. And if we go to AccuBattery, this kind of backs up the same thing. So it thinks at the minute the screen would last for 4 hours 51. On my current charge, is this? Well, actually, look at this. Look, 36 hours, 28% used. That's pretty impressive. 2 hours of screen time, or 2 hours and a third, 24%. Fair enough. If we go to the bottom, it gives us what, over the last sort of few charge cycles, it thinks I could get 10 hours screen on time. I'm not sure about that. It thinks standby time. I mean, how many days is that? Someone work it out. That's like, what, 6 days or something? 166 hours? I don't know. So that's a lot of hours. That's a lot of days. And combine use, so it thinks I'll get about 85 hours just using it as I'm using it. That's immense. I don't think I've ever had an Android device, and I'm including, was it the Power that had 6,000 milliamp hours battery in it? I can't think I've ever had a device that I could go 3 days. I'll comfortably go 3 days. I'm at 48%. I've gone almost 40 hours. We're only just past halfway. That's crazy. How have they done that? I mean, that's wildly better than anything else I've ever used. Now, granted, I've not really left the flat much in the last 40 hours. I've been in the gym, I've been to have my haircut. So it's kind of sitting about the flat on Wi-Fi. As we saw, screen on time, only 2 hours and 20. So it's not massive. If you're a heavy user, you're not going to get 80 odd hours. But this is my usage, and that's just immense. so definite, one of the biggest pluses for the device is the battery. So the build quality is good, the design is quite good, the speaker's reasonable, the battery's amazing, all on a budget device. I think that's really good. The camera is adequate. You don't want this if you are a big photographer, but it's okay, it'll do the trick for most things. The screen is reasonable. Again, there's only really going to be problems if you're in the bright sunlight a lot of the time. There's a little bit of jitter, I wouldn't even call it lag, but generally it's very smooth. You wouldn't be gaming on this phone. It's not got the power to be playing games all the time. It's fine for checking the web, checking your emails, using a few apps here and there for light duties. But it's going to always have regular updates. We're on Android 8.1. It's going to have regular security updates. So if you were to be buying this for a parent, which is often the way that it goes, at least you know it's going to have up-to-date security. I don't quite know why it's not Android Pie. That's the one thing that bugs me about it. I mean, that first came out back in March, and it went for general release in August, which is now like 3 months ago. and it's a stock Android device. So that's probably my biggest issue with this, because that shouldn't really be. That's not saving money, being on an old version of Android. Saving money is having a 2-year-old chipset, a screen that's not quite as bright, and a camera that's not amazing. Being on last year's Android is not saving money. So I'm not quite sure. That's my only issue with this device. I think for the money, I think it's the one to go for. I think it beats the Nokia. I think it beats the Alcatel. I don't know. Well, let me know in the comments if you think there's another phone in this kind of price bracket, and I'm talking less than 150 really, that would be better than this. Please let me know, because I don't know, I just think this is a really nice bit of hardware that you can't go far wrong with. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but for now, my name's Andy. I'll catch you all again soon. Well done, and thank you for making it to the end of the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, you might want to click the little fellow that should hopefully appear about here to subscribe. You may also want to check out some of my other videos, which are going to appear somewhere there. Also, come and have a look at my website, androidandy.uk. There is also a forum. Come and say hello on the forum if you've got any questions about things, or request me to review things, or anything else. Just come and have a chat on the forum.